Matt Kenseth will join the SRX, and Lewis Hamilton says that he is interested in running NASCAR. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go ahead by starting talking about all the throwback paint schemes that have been revealed over the last couple days. The first throwback we're looking at is Josh Berry's throwback to Kevin Hamill's 2007 scheme. Kevin Hamill, of course, is the spotter of Josh Berry and Alex Bowman, and I have to say this one is definitely one of my favorite ones that has been revealed so far. Hedger Motorsports did a really awesome and a really great job, and I'm definitely looking forward to see it out on the racetrack at Darlington at the throwback race. The next throwback we're looking at is Ross Chastain's Lee Petty throwback that we'll see in the NASCAR Truck Series. I believe this throwback to Lee Petty's 1959 or 1960 scheme. This looks pretty good. I don't like the fact that they split it up in two different photos. They should just do one photo, but nonetheless, this looks pretty good. The next throwback we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s Dale Jarrett throwback to 1999. This is basically the same scheme that Ross Chastain is running, and I like Ross Chastain's. This one I do not like. It looks like a copy. It looks like less of a really good scheme. It doesn't really look that good in my opinion. One of my least favorite throwbacks so far. The next throwback we're looking at is Christian Eckes' Herschel McGriff scheme. This one looks really good in my opinion. I think that McAnally Hoagman did a really good job on this one. I'm excited to see this one out on the racetrack at Darlington. The next throwback we're looking at is Jake Garcia's Buckshot Jones scheme, the Buckshot Jones 1999 or 2000 scheme. This one looks really good in my opinion. I think did a really awesome job on it, very similar colors, and pretty good sponsorship on the car, in my opinion. The next throwback we're looking at is Kevin Harvick's AOL scheme to the scheme that he was going to initially run when he drove the 30 car. This is not a throwback in my opinion. It doesn't have the same color scheme, and if you didn't have that picture of the AOL car, which is basically blacked out, you wouldn't tell this was a throwback. I think this is one of my least favorite throwbacks, probably my least favorite throwback so far. I'm getting tired of them not doing correct throwbacks, and honestly, this does not look that good, in my honest opinion. The next throwback we're looking at is Matt Mills' Herbie car scheme. Of course, from the movie Herbie. This looks really good. Very simplistic. I love it. It absolutely looks incredible, and I'm excited to see it out on the racetrack. The next throwback we're looking at is Roger Cruz throwback to Wendell Scott's, I believe, 1973 paint scheme. This looks really good in my opinion. Love the colors. He did a really good job on this throwback. The next throwback we're looking at is Noah Gragson's Jimmy Johnson 2014 Coke 600 throwback. This is definitely one of my favorite throwbacks. You've got the right color scheme on it. You've got the right colors. It looks amazing. It looks incredible. And I'm excited to see it out on the racetrack at Darlington. The next throwback we're looking at is Ryan Preece's throwback to his dad, Jeff Preece, from 1998. Pretty good looking throwback in my opinion. Very simplistic. Love the colors. It looks pretty good in my opinion. The next throwback we're looking at is Ty Gibbs, Bobby Labonte, Joe Gibbs honoring him in the Hall of Fame scheme. This looks really good in my opinion. I think this is one of my favorites so far as well, and I think it did a really good job on this throwback. The next throwback we're looking at is Chase Briscoe's throwback to Tony Stewart's 2000 Turkey Night Grand Prix win. Colors, very similar. Not the same sponsorship, but the colors look really good and very similar. The next throwback we're looking at is Sage Karam's Richard Childress throwback, and Rich Childress drove in the NASCAR Cup Series. Good job from Alpha Prime Racing. Alpha Prime Racing has some really awesome looking paint schemes, and this one looks really awesome. The next throwback we're looking at is Lois Allison's Adam Petty throwback to 1999. Great job from Nice Motorsports on this one again. This looks really good. I think that they've done a really good job on their throwback so far, and this one is no exception. It looks really awesome. The next throwback we're looking at is Chad Fisham's throwback to Eric McClure, the late Eric McClure. This one looks pretty good in my opinion. I think the NBM Motorsports did a pretty solid job, and nonetheless, I'm looking forward to see it out on the racetrack at Darlington. The next throwback we're looking at is Corey Haim's Timothy Peters 2014 throwback. This looks really good. Love simplicity. You don't need a lot going on here. It looks very simplistic. One of my favorites so far, and it looks really accurate. The next throwback we're looking at is Eric Jones' throwback to Richard Petty's 1968 scheme. It's basically the same thing that I've done over and over again for many years. And honestly, I'd like to see him change it up, do like a John Andretti throwback. I think that would be really cool. But nonetheless, I think it looks okay. It looks simplistic. Not much to say other than that. And the final throwback we're looking at is Daniel Dye's throwback to Richard Petty's 1976 scheme. Now, I do like this one. This looks really good. I think the GMS did a really solid job, and nonetheless, I'm looking forward to see it out on the racetrack at Darlington. It looks really good and really awesome, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about the Chicago Street Course. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday, the Chicago Street Course, NASCAR has found a third sponsor for Chicago Street Course with Olive by Coin Flip, which is a Chicago-based company. We already know that McDonald's, I can't remember the other company that's going to be part of the board. There's going to be 4 premier partners of the company, but Olive by Coin Flip, like I said, is a local Chicago company, so it makes a lot of sense. And nonetheless, I love the fact that they've got a new company coming in to be part of the premier sponsors, and it's exciting to see them jumping on the board. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about the Kansas purse money for this weekend. So every single time we have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series or Truck Series race, Bob Pockers always puts out the purse money for each of those races. And according to him, the Cup Series race is $7,536,752, and the Truck Series race is $734,551. That's a pretty good money, of course, for the Cup Series. Is always going to have a lot more money due to the fact that they have the charters to pay. Of course, there's going to be no unchartered teams this weekend, so it's a little bit less money. If you had a little more unchartered teams, probably a little more money going into the purse. But nonetheless, that is the purse money for this weekend at Kansas Speedway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Neil Smith. As it was announced yesterday that Neil Smith is going to be the Grand Marshal and will give the command for the Cup Series race at Kansas. Neil Smith was part of the Kansas City Chiefs for many, many years, a legend of the Kansas City Chiefs, and it's well-deserved he's going to be able to give the command. Hopefully he can do a really, really good job, and I'm looking forward to see that he'll be giving the command for the Cup Series race at Kansas. Really looking forward to that. Excited for that for sure. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Chicago. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Wednesday afternoon that street paving projects have begun in Chicago for the street race. Of course, some of the streets that they're going to be running in Chicago do need to be paved for that NASCAR Cup Series race because you don't want Cup Series cars going over really, really bumpy roads, especially with the fact that if they go over how fragile these next-gen cars have tended to be, you basically can have potential these cars end up being broken apart. So I think this is a really good decision by Chicago. I expected they were going to do this, and I'm really glad that they have decided to go ahead and get these street paving projects underway and went ahead to try to get it done. Nonetheless, this is a really, really good decision. Of course, Chicago Street Course race is less than 2 months away. There's a lot of uncertainty on the Chicago Street Course race past 2023. Nonetheless, though, this is a really good decision to go ahead and pave these roads, and hopefully they can be smooth enough to where they'll be really, really good and ready for race time in a couple months. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Larry Phillips and Sam Ard. As NASCAR course is doing their top 75 greatest drivers, and we're getting really close to finding out all the drivers who will be part of that top 75. Well, it's been announced over the last day or two that Larry Phillips and Sam Ard have been added to the top 75 greatest NASCAR drivers of all time. Both of them absolutely deserve to be on the list. Larry Phillips won thousands of races and won 5 NASCAR National Touring Series championships in the weekly series. And the guy won a lot of races in his time. In fact, one season, I think he won like 100 or 200 races in a single season, or 30 or 40 races, won a lot of races in a single season. Sam Ard, of course, one of the greatest NASCAR Xfinity Series drivers ever, won many Xfinity Series races and was a legend of the NASCAR Xfinity Series and accomplished a lot in the world of NASCAR and in the world of racing as well. So congratulations to both of them. They've earned the right. They've earned it. And I'm really excited to see if both of them are going to be part of the top 75 greatest drivers because they've absolutely earned the right to be part of the top 75 greatest NASCAR drivers, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Briscoe. As it was announced on Wednesday afternoon that Chase Briscoe is going to be making his late model debut on pavement at North Wilkesboro on April 17th, driving for Chad Bryant Racing. He will drive the number 5 car at North Wilkesboro. There is expected to be a lot of NASCAR Cup Series drivers and even Truck Series drivers who are going to be competing at North Wilkesboro. I believe that Dale Jr. is going to be competing in that North Wilkesboro event, and also Kevin Harvick, I believe, is going to be competing in the event on May 17th. Obviously, it's a really, really good decision for Chase Briscoe to get experience. He's, of course, used to running late models, but that is on the dirt side of things in sprint cars. It's really good for him to get experience at North Wilkesboro. I think it's going to prepare him. I think it's going to help him out in the long run, and I think it will help him have an opportunity and a shot to be competitive at North Wilkesboro. So this is a really good decision. Of course, that's about 2 weeks from now, which is really, really exciting. I expect a lot of NASCAR Cup Series drivers to compete in that, and nonetheless, glad to see he's going to be running a late model race at North Wilkesboro. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Logan Sergeant. Now, Logan Sergeant, of course, is going to be the United States, the Miami Grand Prix in the United States. And basically, Logan Sergeant was asked about his brother, Dillon Sergeant. Well, Logan Sergeant says that Dillon Sergeant should have gone to IndyCar instead of NASCAR because he could have had a better shot at being competitive. But, of course, Dillon Sergeant chose the NASCAR route. While Dillon Sergeant was pretty competitive in ARCA, his time in the NASCAR Truck Series was subpar. He struggled in the Truck Series, didn't do really good with GMS, and GMS was pretty good in 2018, but he struggled with GMS racing in the 2018 season. And since that 2018 season, Dillon Sergeant has basically disappeared off the face of the planet and has basically at this point been focused on helping his brother Logan Sergeant in Formula One. Of course, competes full-time with Williams in Formula One at this current moment. I wonder how he would have done if he gone to IndyCar, if he would have been really, really successful, because maybe he would have been more successful in IndyCar than he would have been in NASCAR. But he chose the NASCAR route because NASCAR was a big thing in the United States, and it would make a lot of sense for him to focus on that. Nonetheless, so it really be interesting to see what would have happened, but he basically chose the path that he went down, and he basically didn't succeed a lot in NASCAR, but he basically is now helping his brother out a lot, and I think he really has going to do a really good job continuing-wise to help his brother out in the long term going forward. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Joey Logano. Now, according to Adam Stern, Joey Logano is involved in a potential 70-acre move to use real estate project near Charlotte that would see him donate $500,000 to charity. This is really, really cool to see. I believe someone that's part of the director of Boards of World of Outlaws, or IMSA, is also part of this as well. It's really good to see Joey Logano is giving back to charity. We all think of Joey Logano as being someone who, outside of the car, is a really, really nice guy and does a lot of great things outside of the sport as well. Maybe inside the sport he could do a little bit better, but outside of sport he does a lot of great things for it and really helps out NASCAR in a huge and a really, really big way. So this is really good to see Joey Logano is getting involved in these projects. It's going to be really, really big for the sport. Nonetheless, excited to see that Joey Logano is getting involved in different projects. I think this is really, really big for the sport, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Juan Pablo Montoya. As it was announced on Wednesday afternoon that Juan Pablo Montoya will drive for Rickware Racing in IMSA in the LMP2 class for 3 races. He'll be running, I believe, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We'll be running at Road America. And I can't remember the other race that he is going to run later this year, but he'll run 3 races with Rickware Racing in 2023. Juan Montoya is one of the greatest race car drivers of all time. Of course, he won a lot of Formula One races, won multiple NASCAR Cup Series races, won 2 Indianapolis 500s, also won a Kart Series championship, and has also, I believe, won IMSA championships in his career as well. Bringing him in to drive for the team is absolutely huge. They also got Elton Julian, who's going to be part of their team as well as the performance director, which is really, really big for Rickware Racing's IMSA program. I expect him to be very, very competitive and really, really fast. But my hope is that Juan Montoya gets an opportunity to run a couple races of Rickware Racing and NASCAR, especially with some races that are going to be coming up that are available, especially the road course races. I would love to see Rickware Racing give Juan Montoya a shot and an opportunity to come back to NASCAR and drive for their team. I think he'd be really, really competitive. I think he'd be really, really fast, and I think he'd have a really good shot to potentially get the win, or not win, but at least maybe get a top 15 or top 20. I know Rickware Racing cars have not been that fast, but I think that we would see Juan Montoya do a really, really good job and be competitive really, really quickly. So this is a really good thing to see, and nonetheless, I hope he can come and run some NASCAR races, but I think this is a really big pickup for Rickware Racing and their IMSA program, and I think he's going to do a really awesome and a really good job, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Ty Dillon. As it was announced yesterday morning that Ty Dillon will drive the 3 for Richard Childress Racing next weekend at Darlington. He's also going to run a throwback to the 2003 Ferris Motors throwback, which I believe was the first time we saw Ferris Motors on a car in the NASCAR Cup or the Xfinity Series. Now, it's been expected that Ty Dillon was going to run a couple NASCAR Xfinity Series races in the 2023 season. We didn't know exactly which races he was going to run. We knew that Ferris Motors was going to be part of that. I think he's going to run probably 3 or 4 races with the team. Now, looking at his potential possibility of being competitive, I think that Ty Dillon has a really good chance and a really good possibility for competing for the win. We've seen how fast Rich Childress Racing has been in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and yes, he's definitely struggled in the NASCAR Cup Series this season. But I think that him going back to the Xfinity Series, I think he's going to have a really good chance to have a shot at getting it done. And I think he'll be very, very competitive right from the get-go. Austin Hill's been fast, and also Sheldon Creed, we know how good he is at Darlington historically, so I think that Ty Dillon's going to have a really good chance and a really good opportunity to be competitive, and I'm definitely excited to see he'll be competing for RCR in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. We don't know what the other race he's going to run, but you know, of course, that he's going to be basically running for RCR in a couple races. I think he's going to have a really good chance and a really good opportunity to be very, very competitive, to be honest with you. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Trackhouse Racing. Now, we've talked about Trackhouse Racing a lot on the channel. Adam Stern put out a tweet about Justin Marks talking to media in regards to Trackhouse Racing. And Justin Marks says that there just have not been a team in the sport that is brand-centric. Most teams have been namesakes of owners in the past. This is absolutely true from Justin Marks in Trackhouse Racing. One thing that's been changing over the last few years is that you're seeing a lot more brand name recognition instead of team name recognition, because it used to be teams like Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing. Now you're starting to see changes in the brand-centric stuff. You've got the Money Team that's come in. That's a brand-centric name. 2311 Racing. That's a brand-centric name. Trackhouse Racing, of course. That's a brand-centric name. We've been seeing a lot more of these brand-centric names, and I think that's one thing that's changing with the culture of racing right now, is I think that's something that is going, and I think it's something that is going to continue to change, is you're going to start seeing more brand-centric teams instead of teams with names. We've got Alpha Prime Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Tricon Garage. That's a brand recognition name. And I think that's something that is going to continue long-term in NASCAR. I think eventually by the time we get to like 2030 or 2040, if the sport is around that long, which I do expect, and NASCAR is going to be around for many, many years going forward, I think it's going to be something really, really important to watch, is what these teams are going to look like. And if any of the names like Hendrick Motorsports will ever change, I don't think they're ever going to change. Maybe Jeff Gordon decides to change it. I don't know. But you're not going to see some of the big teams change. They haven't changed already. But I think over time, you're going to see a lot more teams that do come into the sport that are more brand-centric than basically the namesake. So it's going to be interesting to watch what happens in regards to that. But nonetheless, it will be something to watch going forward. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Bubba Wallace. It was announced yesterday, late afternoon, that Bubba Wallace will drive the one for Tricon Garage for 2 races in the 2023 season. He will run at Darlington and will also run North Wilkesboro. So basically be in back-to-back weeks in that number 1 truck. Now, Bubba Wallace, of course, currently drives full-time in the Cup Series for 2311 Racing in the number 23 car. And it's been an up-and-down season so far for Bubba Wallace in the NASCAR Cup Series. So I think getting this Truck Series experience is really going to help him. And every time Bubba Wallace competes in the Truck Series, he's always competing for the wins. And I think Bubba Wallace is going to have a really good chance and a really good shot and opportunity to compete for the overall victory in both of those races. We've seen Corey Heim be really competitive, and we've seen other drivers got behind the wheel of that one truck do a really good job. And let's look forward to that North Wilkesboro race. There's going to be a lot of NASCAR Cup Series drivers running that event. You got Cristobal driving a second to Tory Racing truck, the number 61. You've got potentially Alex Bowman driving a 7th truck, though I'd imagine either Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott is probably going to get behind the wheel of that truck if Alex Bowman is not medically cleared by that point. And then, of course, you have another truck, the 51 for KBM, that's going to be driven by William Byron. I look at Bubba Wallace to be very, very competitive, though, in the race that he runs. It would not surprise or shock me if he wins one or both of those races. I think he's got a really good chance to be competitive. I'm excited to see that he's getting the opportunity to drive for Tricon Garage. I think he's going to do a really exciting and a really good job. And nonetheless, I'm looking forward to see that he'll be competing with Tricon Garage in the number 1 truck. I think he'll do a really awesome and a really good job, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Jimmie Johnson. Now, of course, in 2024, Legacy Motor Club is going to be switching manufacturers from Chevrolet to Toyota. And of course, there's a lot of talk about the 84 car, and if Jimmie Johnson is going to run in 2024. Now, Jimmie Johnson did address the media, and Austin Kenseth from Sportsnet put out a really good article around that. If Jimmie Johnson says that he still wants to race in the 2024 season. He still wants to strap behind the wheel and get behind the wheel of a NASCAR Cup Series car. Jimmie Johnson in 2024, at the beginning of the year, will be 48 years old. And by the end of 2024, will be 49 years old. And obviously, Jimmie Johnson is going to run quite a few NASCAR Cup Series races here. We know he's going to run the Chicago Street Course. He's going to run the Coke 600 in a few weeks as well. And there's probably other races that we're going to see Jimmie Johnson behind the wheel this year as well. I think it'll be really awesome to see what races Jimmie Johnson does decide to run heading into the 2024 year. Maybe Jimmie decides to run a lot more races, but we know at this point that we're going to see Legacy Motor Club switch to Toyota, which will be the first time that Jimmie Johnson has driven anything other than Chevy in NASCAR. Now, obviously, he did drive for Honda in IndyCar with Chip Ganassi Racing, but basically, he'll be driving, if he does drive next year, which sounds like he does want to drive in 2024 on a part-time basis, I'd imagine he'll be driving a Toyota, of course, with Legacy Motor Club being ownership, and we'll see if he can really help Legacy Motor Club become a very solid organization in the NASCAR Cup Series. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, but nonetheless, Jimmie Johnson addresses our 2024 plans, and he could go ahead and drive. We'll have to wait and see what happens, though. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Truex. Now, Ryan Truex picked up his first career NASCAR top tier winning race this past weekend at Dover International Speedway. And Ryan Truex basically was asked a question about, is he working toward his 2024 NASCAR plans? Well, Ryan Truex addressed that on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio over the last couple of days, and he says that he is working towards a full-time ride with Joe Gibbs Racing heading into the 2024 NASCAR season. Now, currently the plans would be that he would drive full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the number 19 car for 2024. Honestly, if he drives full-time for Joe Gibbs Racing, he will be a championship threat and a championship contender right off the bat. We've seen how well he's done with Joe Gibbs Racing this season. It's not just based on the fact that he scored his first career victory in Xfinity at Dover, but he finished second in Phoenix, he finished third in Atlanta, and has generally been up front on a consistent basis in that number 19 car. And he's been the best performing driver in that 19 car this season. You look at other drivers like Joe Graf Jr., Maya Snyder, who've been behind the wheel of the 19 car this year, and they have kind of struggled. Even Ryan Truex has, I think, outperformed Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs did pretty good in his only race in that 19 car, but I think, let's be for real, Ryan Truex has been the best performing driver in that 19 car this season. So I think he absolutely deserves a shot and an opportunity to go full-time in the 2024 season, which I think he will do very, very good if he does go full-time. I think he deserves an opportunity and deserves a shot. Now, if he does go full-time in the 2024 NASCAR Xfinity Series season, how well do I think he'll perform with JGR? Well, I think Ryan Truex is easily going to be a championship threat and will be a championship contender, and he probably will get at least 2 or 3 wins, and maybe even more depending how low the competition field is. But if he doesn't go full-time with JGR, what are the other options? Well, I think there's one other option, that's Junior Motorsports. Remember, there's a lot of rumors behind the scenes going on at the moment that Josh Berry is expected to join and drive for Stewart-Haas Racing next season, which means the A car could be available next year. So that could be another possibility and another chance for Ryan Truex to go there. But likely at this point, I'd imagine he'll be driving full-time for Joe Gibbs Racing next season. There could be some moves up in the Cup Series as well. We don't know what's going on with Martin Truex Jr. past this season, and one of the drivers in Xfinity, like a John Henry Nemechek or Sammy Smith, could make the jump up next year in 2024, though I don't know if that's going to likely happen because Truex sounds like they want to bring him back next year, which I think would be really good if they kept all their driver lineup for 2024, so it would create a little bit of stability, especially for their younger development. That being said, though, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but it sounds like Ryan Truex could potentially go full-time next year with Joe Gibbs Racing Xfinity. I think he's got a really good chance to do that in 2024. I think he's got a shot to go full-time. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about street courses. Now, there's a lot of talk about potentially adding more street course races in the foreseeable future. Now, Oscar Nensi from Sportsnet put out an article in regards to this. And NASCAR apparently has talked about adding more street course races and talked to more cities about adding street course races in their cities in the foreseeable future. Now, the question would it be 2024? Well, Adam Stern basically said that NASCAR would basically be a little too soon to add more street course races in the 2024 season. But down the road, there could be more street course races that are added. Now, right now, there's only one street course race on NASCAR's schedule, and that's the street course race that is happening in Chicago. However, there is a lot of uncertainty at the moment right now about if they're going to go back to Chicago past 2023. Yes, they have a multi-year deal with the Chicago Street Course that goes through the 2025 season. But remember, that Chicago Street Course thing was signed when Lori Lightfoot was the mayor. Now there's a new mayor and sheriff in town, and that's Brandon Johnson. He's planning to look at those contracts. It would not surprise or shock me if we're not racing at Chicago in the street course. Now, there is a potential possibility that we could see a street course race regardless. There's a couple potential areas we could see a street course race. Number one is Long Beach. If Chicago loses that street course day, I think Long Beach would be a perfect city to go to. Long Beach always puts on really awesome and great racing, and I think that could be a really good replacement for basically the California Speedway track that's currently being right now developed into a short track. There's a lot of talk today, man, and that might not even be around. They're trying to get worked on that. We don't know if that's going to be ready for 2025. We know they're not going to be there in 2024, but they may not even be ready for 2025, and you might consider having Long Beach as a potential racetrack that you could go to. There's also been talk that Pittsburgh has also been in the questions and has also been in the rumblings as well as a possibility because Pittsburgh has said they'd be open to running a street course race as well for NASCAR. Maybe if Chicago loses their day, especially if how kind of close Pennsylvania is to Illinois, that could be another potential possibility as well. It's definitely for sure going to be interesting to see what happens when it comes to the rumors of the street course racing, but I think it'll be something to watch going forward. I'd like to see basically success on this, and nonetheless, I think it'd be really a decision if they would go somewhere else. If they basically end up losing their day Chicago does, I think there would be a really strong chance and a really good possibility that maybe go Pittsburgh or somewhere else in the 2024 season. Now we'll go ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Denny Hamlin calling out the lack of stars in the sport. Now, there was an Associated Press article that came out from Jenna Fryer, and Denny Hamlin basically talking about NASCAR lacks stars. Denny Hamlin says that NASCAR has a lack of stars. No one knows who the stars of our sport are now. Until NASCAR has actual superstars, NASCAR will always be niche. Denny Hamlin is 100% accurate and 100% right. If you go up to someone on the street, most people don't know who any of the current NASCAR drivers are. The only people you probably would recognize if you said are probably Bubba Wallace and maybe Kyle Busch. That might be about it, and maybe Chase Elliott as well if you're lucky. But most people don't know who a driver like Kyle Larson is, who is one of the greatest NASCAR drivers ever. A lot of people don't know who a guy like Kyle Larson is. A lot of people don't know who other drivers are. There's also Haley Deegan to mention, and she's known by a lot of people because of her YouTube channel, but that might be it. But a lot of people don't know Ross Chastain until you show them the Hail Mary move. Oh, they're like, oh yeah, I've seen that move on TikTok. Most people don't recognize a lot of the current drivers. And I think that's on NASCAR a little bit. They don't push out their stars a lot. NASCAR needs to be doing a lot of better job, especially with their social media presence. They need to do a better job pushing their drivers. And it is really disappointing to see because NASCAR used to be extremely popular. And when NASCAR was at the top of things, a lot of people recognize even some of the mid-pack drivers in the field. But most people, of course, recognize Tony Stewart, Dale Jr., Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Carl Edwards, other drivers like Mark Martin, you name it. Those guys, if you asked about them, they basically would know them. And a lot of people say, are those guys still racing in NASCAR today? Which none of those guys are racing on a full-time basis in NASCAR, even racing at all anymore. And it's really disappointing to see because I think a lot of drivers in NASCAR right now have a lot of great personality. But also, NASCAR basically goes ahead and penalizes those guys sometimes if they speak their mind and speak the truth, which basically tells drivers, hey, don't show any personality and basically just lie through your teeth about basically being calm and stuff and not show any personality at all. Because I can tell you, a lot of these guys probably have really awesome personalities, but they don't show it because they're afraid that they might get in trouble with NASCAR. And NASCAR, to be honest, should be promoting their drivers a lot more. If the sport is going to grow long-term and succeed on a long-term basis in a foreseeable future, they need to start promoting their drivers a lot more throughout their social media. And it seems like they're starting to get behind promoting Ross Chastain a little bit more, which is a great thing. When Fox is even doing really funny sketches, I thought that was really funny, that thing that Fox did, but they need to promote their drivers a lot more than they currently are. And sadly, right now, they're just not doing that, and I think that's hurting their brand and hurting their process in a major, major way. So I need to see them promote them a lot more in the long-term future. If NASCAR is going to succeed, they need to start promoting their drivers a lot more, and hopefully in the long-term future they can do that and start doing a better job in regards to that. Hopefully that ends up happening and trying to get it out to a younger demographic as well, because that's one thing a Formula 1's got right now. There's a lot of Formula 1 drivers are being recognized because they have a younger demographic. You need to get that younger demographic involved outside of the world of NASCAR. Try to find a way to bring people in because NASCAR eventually is going to become niche and less people are going to continue to watch unless you promote your drivers. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the next TV deal. Now, I kind of skimmed over this a little bit earlier in the week. We had a little bit of updates in regards to the next TV deal. Last night, it was reported by Andrew Merkin and John Hourman in regards to the next TV deal. And they said that NASCAR met with Amazon, Apple TV Plus, and other streamers about a new midsummer package. And currently, right now, the favorite to potentially pick up that midsummer deal is Amazon Prime. Now, obviously, this is a really big thing that's going on is that NASCAR wants to have streaming involved in their next TV deal. Now, I'm on the fence when it comes to this right now. I'm 50-50 in this situation because on one hand, the positives of a streaming platform is one, there is a potential for those races that are part of that midsummer package to go commercial free. If you want my honest opinion, I think all NASCAR Cup Series races should be commercial free on that summer deal. If you don't make those races commercial free, there is no point of having that. The negative side things though, when it does come to that, is basically you're going to cut your audience off in a major way. Even though cable is dropping a lot in their viewership, and of course, basically the streaming is gaining, streaming does not have a big enough number to back it up right now that could change in the next years, and it's growing at a rapid rate, but it's not growing enough to be extremely successful at this particular point and overtake everything else. And basically, same thing goes for cable. Cable still is basically relevant, but it's continuing to drop, and that's going to change, and it's going to level out eventually. That being said, though, when it comes to the TV deal, Amazon Prime would absolutely be my perfect choice for the next TV deal in that midsummer package. We look at Thursday Night Football, and that is extremely successful, and it gets a lot of people tuning in overall as well. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in regards to that. There's also a lot of rumors that they may add more races to the next TV deal. In fact, they're talking about expanding the schedule from 36, maybe 40 or 42 races. Maybe there's a possibility that there could be some midweek races in next year's schedule, and maybe in 2025, I should say, very similar to what they did during the COVID times. And maybe then that's where they could do the midsummer races, to where those races, which didn't get a lot of viewership anyways, those could go there, which could be a potential possibility as well. It is going to be very interesting to watch what happens in regards to that when it does come to the next TV deal. But nonetheless, I think if they do get a streaming partner, I think it's going to be Amazon Prime. Amazon is growing at a rapid rate when it comes to Prime. There's a lot of great TV shows on Amazon Prime. And maybe, just maybe, they could simulcast to Twitch, very similar to do their NFL games. Maybe they could find a way to simulcast to Twitch. Would it be absolutely really huge for Amazon if they ended up doing that? So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens in regards to that. And nonetheless, this was really fun to watch. And it's going to be a lot of speculation. A deal could be signed by the end of this summer. We have to wait and see what happens with the revenue side of things for the teams. But nonetheless, it's going to be very interesting to see. Because right now, the favorites right now are Fox and NBC to take back the main services. We're going to have to wait and see what happens, what ends up winning. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we are talking about Lewis Hamilton. Now, of course, this weekend is the first of 3 U.S. Grand Prix that's going to take place in 2023 at Miami. And Lewis Hamilton was asked a question by Jenna Fryer and multiple other reporters this past weekend. And Lewis Hamilton was asked, are you interested in maybe running in NASCAR in the foreseeable future? Lewis Hamilton actually responded to the media, and he said, I'd like to try it. He also said, of course, I do want to focus on Formula One, but maybe in the foreseeable future, I'd like to try NASCAR. This is definitely very interesting. Now, this would not be the first time Lewis Hamilton has driven a NASCAR Cup Series car if he was to run it. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton did a swap with Tony Stewart in 2011 when Mobil 1 was a big partner. Of course, Mobil 1's been a big partner with Stewart-Haas Racing. And in 2011, Lewis Hamilton drove for McLaren in Formula 1. He basically drove that the McLaren Mercedes cars. He basically had that going on where they had a driver meet. But it's been almost 15 years since that ended up happening. Now, Lewis Hamilton is currently 37 years old, and by the end of the 2023 Formula 1 season, he'll be 38. So Lewis Hamilton is still probably getting really close to the end of his Formula 1 career. But he's also expected to sign a multi-year deal in a multi-year contract with Formula 1's team Mercedes going down the road. Now, Lewis Hamilton, obviously, it would be no-brainer for me if he came to NASCAR. What team would he run for? He would obviously end up running for Project 91, in my opinion. Project 91 is a team that's had a lot of past Formula 1 drivers. You've got Kimi Räikkönen, who drove for Project 91, and also there was rumors that Jenson Button could have driven the Project 91 car, and there could be a potential possibility long-term that a driver like Juan Montoya comes into play. But you think about this, there's other Formula One drivers who are legends of the sport, like I mentioned, Kimi Räikkönen and Jenson Button, who have come over and raced in Formula One in NASCAR as well, and dipped their toes into running in NASCAR. And I think it'd be really, really exciting and really cool and also really fun if Lewis Hamilton made a decision to come and run in NASCAR. Maybe run the Daytona 500. Maybe not just run a road course, maybe run the Daytona 500 as well. It'd be really big for NASCAR if he came over maybe as early as 2024, because not only would you be able to attract that Formula One audience to come and watch your sport, yes, a lot of Formula fans are not a big fan of NASCAR, but you'd be able to attract a lot of people over and would bring a lot of eyes onto the sport if a driver like Lewis Hamilton was trying to qualify in the Daytona 500 or other NASCAR Cup Series races. Now, Lewis Hamilton probably would struggle, let's be for real, because he hasn't driven a NASCAR Cup Series car much at all. But if he drove for a really fast team like Project 91, I think he'd be extremely competitive. Or maybe even 2311 Racing in that third 2311 racing car. I think it'd be really interesting to see if Lewis Hamilton decided to come. Because if he drove in NASCAR, I would see him maybe driving for Trackhouse, maybe like that team. I don't know at this point, but nonetheless, it's going to be very interesting to see what Lewis Hamilton decides to do if he decides to ever come in NASCAR, because I think it'd be really fun to have a driver like Lewis Hamilton race in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think it'd be really great and really fun for the sport, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens if he ever decides to come over and race in NASCAR. I would love, like I said, I would love for Lewis Hamilton to come and race in NASCAR, because I think it's going to be really, really fun, exciting, and I hope he decides to go ahead and make up his mind and say, hey, you know what, let's try out NASCAR, because we've seen a lot of people from Formula One, other forms of racing, and I think this next-gen car has changed the minds of a lot of drivers. I think a lot of drivers who are outside of the NASCAR world have shown interest in racing. They've gotten Travis Pastrana, Kimi Räikkönen, Jenson Button. Other drivers from other worlds have come over, like Jonathan Davenport, Bristol Dirt. I think that this car has changed the game in a lot of big ways, and I think that's one of the reasons why Lewis Hamilton is interested in racing NASCAR. And maybe, just maybe, in 2023 or 2024, Lewis Hamilton decides to make the decision to race in NASCAR. Hopefully, in the future, he decide to race in NASCAR. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we are talking about Matt Kenseth. As it was announced on Thursday evening that Matt Kenseth is going to join the SRX in 2023 on a one-off race at Eldora on August 10th. Now, Matt Kenseth has driven in the SRX in the past. He drove in 3 SRX races in 2022 at Paving I-55 Raceway. Also drove, I think, at Eldora Speedway, and there was another race I believe he drove as well. And was actually really, really fast at Eldora and almost won that Eldora race as well. This is really, really exciting stuff. Matt Kenseth, of course, one of the greatest NASCAR drivers of all time. Won a lot of races, won a NASCAR Cup Series championship in 2003, almost won the championship in 2013 as well, and was really, really competitive throughout his NASCAR Cup Series career. And it is really fun to see that Matt Kenseth is doing stuff outside the world of racing, well, coming back to racing and racing in the SRX. I think at that Eldora race, he's going to be very, very competitive, really, really quick, and I think he's going to have a really good chance of potentially getting that win. I think he's got a really good chance to get it done. But you think about the SRX overall, there is a lot of really strong drivers who are going to be part of the SRX season. You got a lot of drivers going full-time this year. You've got Brad Keselowski, who of course currently drives the 6 car full-time for RFK in the Cup Series. You've got Hailie Deegan going full-time once again, who drives the 13 for Thorsport Racing. Tony Stewart, co-owner of Stewart Haas Racing and been a champion of this sport. Bobby Labonte, NASCAR Hall of Famer. You've got other drivers going part-time. Actually, you've got Joseph Newgarden, I believe, driving full-time for a couple races this season. Paul Tracy is back this year. You've got Kenny Walsh doing a one-off race in 2023. You've got other drivers. You got, of course, Kyle Busch running 2 races this year. You've got Kevin Harvick doing 1 or 2 races. Clint Bowyer's doing 3 races. Casey Kane's going to be back for a one-off. Greg Biffle's going to be back for a one-off this year. You've also got Daniel Suarez, like I said, driving. Denny Hamlin's going to be part of this. And there are a lot of really awesome drivers part of the SRX season. And the lineup is almost set for 2023. And then not to mention, you've got a fantastic broadcast lineup for 2023. You've got Alan Bessick returning to ESPN, which is absolutely exciting. Alan Bessick, one of the greatest commentators, in fact, one of the goated, part of the Mount Rushmore of commentators in NASCAR history, and one of the greatest ever to commentate NASCAR races and racing in general, especially in IndyCar. You've got Matt Yoakum, who's going to be back on pit road. He's worked with Alan Bessick for many, many years and is one of the greatest pit reporters of all time. It's a shame he's not doing pit reporting for NASCAR, but he's doing IMSA and NBC and does a really good job over there. And of course, you have the color commentators. You've got Joey Logano. You've got Connor Daly and Darrell Waltrip. Darrell Waltrip was one of the greatest color commentators in NASCAR history. Joey Logano, I think long-term will be a great commentator when he does retire from NASCAR in many, many years. And Connor Daly did a really just solid job in the SRX last season. The SRX I'm getting really pumped up and excited for, and I think I would love to see a couple other guys come over. I would love to see Kurt Busch come over and do one-off or two races. It'd be exciting to have Kurt Busch in the SRX. I would love to see Chase Elliott maybe do an SRX race this year. If he basically, I think it would be awesome to have him over. I would love to see Bubba Wallace have a shot and opportunity to race in the SRX. I would love to see Kyle Larson run that Eldora race. I think Kyle Larson would be very, very strong and very quick. And maybe even bring Dale Jr. out for a race or two. Dale Jr., I would love for him to be there, and a lot of people are really excited to have. Maybe even Jeff Gordon gets a shot at an opportunity. But this SRX season is shaping out to be one of the best SRX seasons of all time. I think it's going to be not only a competitive championship, you've got a lot of really strong drivers this year. I would predict it will come down between Tony Stewart and Brad Keselowski for the championship right now. I think those are going to be the two frontrunners for the full championship this year. But I think it's going to be really fun nonetheless to see who else decides to join the SRX this year. The lineup is basically almost completely set at this point, which is really, really great to see. And I'm definitely looking forward to the 2023 SRX season, year 3. And I think this is going to be the greatest SRX season of all time. And it's going to be a very, very fun and exciting season. So, that is going to be it for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, and the channel notifications on so you know if I win a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links are below with that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. How excited are you for the SRX season and Matt Kenseth joining the SRX? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Lewis Hamilton being interested in racing in NASCAR? And would you love to see him full-time or maybe even run a couple races? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, there should be maybe a silly season update or schedule predictions on the channel. There also will be the Truck Series race review for Kansas as well. Then on Sunday, we're going to have the NASCAR Cup Series race review from Kansas. Then Monday, we're going to have a NASCAR news video. We're going to have a video around all the throwback paint schemes, likely coming out Monday or Tuesday, or probably Wednesday, and a lot of other content expected to be released on the channel as we get closer to the Darlington throwback race and also Kansas. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.